My first question is, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well too. Thanks for asking. Now my next question is kind of trying to establish the background of this case, talking about the history of Sudan's relationships with the United States. So when did Sudan first get designated as a state sponsor of terror?
1993.
All right, and now it's been a state sponsor of terror on the state sponsor of terror list ever since, correct?
This is not because they sponsor terrorism, it's simply because they're on the list.
All right, okay, thank you. Now you talk about how Sudan actually ought to be removed from the state sponsor of terrorism list. Now would you agree that back in 2018, the sanctions that were put onto Sudan, some of them were actually removed?
Yes, I would agree that the sanctions were removed. However, the whole point of our policy is removing the designation. And the reason we're doing this is because the economy is crippled.
Okay, now when a state is put onto the state sponsor of terror list, sanctions usually follow that designation, correct?
Yes, but the designation itself
Correct.
is what's harming is what's harming Sudan's.
Okay, and then the designation, you argue, is what's actually harming it. Now,
yes.
Can I see a copy of 1AC, please?
Yes.
Would you agree that in your advantage, you specifically stated that the sanctions have been harming Sudan besides the designation as well?
Yes, but we can talk further in the future about how specifically the state sponsor of terror designation harms Sudan. However, there are still sanctions on Sudan.
Now, you talk about how the sanctions and the state sponsor of terrorism designation has harmed Sudan, but how is designating Sudan as a state sponsor of terror actually harmed the United States and U.S. strategic interests?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
How has designating Sudan as an SSOT harmed U.S. interests?
It's harmed U.S. It hasn't harmed U.S. interests quite yet, but it will harm U.S. interests in the future if we don't act soon.
All right, but there's no current harm right now.
There is a harm. They're moving towards Russia, which is now in the United States' strategic interest. We've shown that in our 1AC.
Okay. Now, why is Sudan going towards Russia harming U.S. strategic interests?
All right, there's a few reasons. The first reason specifically, which was brought up in the 1AC, is because of the civil war that they want to strive up between South Sudan and Sudan.
All right. Now, you talked about, in fact, how Sudan actually complies with U.S. standards. How long have they been complying with U.S. standards and the 5 requirements that you talked about?
I'm not entirely sure, but
right.
The piece of evidence, I'm not sure on the evidence.
All right. Now, going back to Sudan's history, why were they put on the list in the first place?
Why were they placed on the list in the first place? Because they were harboring Osama bin Laden in 1993.
Yeah. Would you agree that they were also caught assisting terrorists in other situations besides Osama bin Laden in 1993?
But again, it was just 1993. We're in 2019 here.
Correct. Now, can you define U.S. strategic interests for me, please?
U.S. strategic interest varies upon the different occasion. However, in this situation, I think U.S. strategic interest can be comprised of mainly 3 things. First, countering terrorism. Second, stopping human rights abuses. And third, neutralizing Russian involvement.
All right. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you.